So, ladies and gentlemen, will you please welcome a great guy. I'll call him a friend. He doesn't call me one, but we'll pretend he does. Mr. Sam Phillips. No, Mr. Sam Thompson. I thought y'all had you fooled, didn't I?
The words 30 days mean anything to you?
Well, it did once. That's a long story. Please do.
All right, good.
Those are my
Hey,
waters.
folks. I've been on this stage in a long time.
Oh, man. Think about it. He was here. He was right there.
In fact, I was standing in that corner right over there when I stepped on Elvis's mic cord. I'll probably tell that story later.
Okay. Now, those are my waters, so don't drink them. I appreciate that, Sam. And now, your beautiful sister, the beauty queen. Well, she can be my beautiful anything she wants to. I love her and all my heart. I sold everything I own just to be right here so I can be next to her. You're going to hear some incredible stories, and I'm so honored to be the one that gets to introduce them. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Linda Thompson.
You're so nice.
She wanted to...
Thank you all. He's frozen. What do we do?
She wanted to pack me in her suitcase and take me to Malibu. And I said, it won't take much. She said, pack a toothbrush. And then I stalked her in Malibu for 3 months. But everything's fine now.
Everything's fine. The police have discontinued their warrant.
I got my wristband. I can't go there anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, Linda Thompson, Sam Thompson.
Thank you.
I think that restraining order has expired.
I think so, yeah. Could be reinstated at any time, though. So how's everybody doing tonight? Everybody's happy? So I brought what's left of my purse. You know, have you been hitting the machines out there? Yeah, so it's not as heavy as it was. Yeah, so Sam and I, we're just going to take some questions from the audience. If you guys, I'm sure a lot of you have questions, right? And you probably know my history with Elvis and Sam's. And there's still a lot of unanswered questions in life, it seems, you know, and certainly when it comes to Elvis's history. So if, where's David? Stanley?
Right
Where are you? Oh, there you are, David. Hi, honey. So you guys all know David Stanley, Elvis's stepbrother. And you know what's funny? That just occurred to me a few days ago, David. Everybody says, oh, Bill Browder introduced Linda, T.G. Shepherd, Bill Browder, to Elvis, and sometimes George Klein would take credit. Actually, you were the one who made the formal introduction, because I came into the Memphian Theater that evening, and I was standing there talking to you and a couple of the other guys, and Elvis burst through the side door. Well, he first banged on the door, and very loudly with this big, long, black flashlight. And then he came bursting through the door with a black suede jacket on, and the collar was turned up, and then there was a cape and the inserts in the pants, and he looked like Dracula. I said, and he came bursting in through the door, and he was flashing the light in everybody's eyes. You know, who the hell locked that side door? You know, why didn't you know I was going to come in that door? And the guys were going, sorry, boss, we thought you were going to come in the front door. And he was kind of angry, flashing the light around, and he flashed it in my eyes, and his whole demeanor changed. Just dropped the light and said, oh, hello, honey. How are you tonight? So he walked over to me, kind of sauntered over, as only Elvis could, with that inimitable walk of his. And I was standing there talking to David, and he said, and who are you, honey? And David said, this is Miss Tennessee Universe, Miss Linda Thompson. And Elvis said, well, hello, honey. You know, he was just so charming. And I was with Jeannie LeMay, who was my roommate in the Miss USA pageant. She was Miss Rhode Island. And I just talked to her the other day, David. She said to say hi. Yeah, I'm happy to see you. Do you have any questions, David? We could start with you. He knows
Good.
it all.
I was going to say, please be careful.
Any questions? Oh, it was my Aunt Betty Sue. That one? Oh, yeah. I had just been on vacation with my Aunt Betty and Uncle Steve and my cousins. Well, when I... Where are you going?
give him a microphone. It takes me about an hour to go that far.
Pay no attention to the man on stage.
Now, I had met Elvis at the Memphian Theater that evening that we just spoke about, and then he invited me to come to Graceland the next night. And so I went to Graceland, met his father, and we had a wonderful time, and we were bonded. I've written in my memoir that I felt that we knew each other before we knew each other, because we both grew up the same way with the same religious fervor, the same sense of family and religion and food and everything, Southern accents. So we really bonded in that time that we were together those first 2 nights. And I told him I'm going on vacation with my family. I'll be in Gulf Shores, Alabama, so I won't be able to see you for a couple of weeks. And it just probably went right through his head because it didn't register that it was going to be 2 weeks. So I went off on vacation with my aunt and family. And when I came back, the whole time I was gone, I was thinking, this is a big star. He's probably never going to call me again. That was so fun, and it felt so real. But I'm, you know how you would do all these machinations in your mind, like it's not real, and he's not going to call me again. Walking in the door at 10 o'clock at night from Gulf Shores, Alabama, the phone was ringing, and my aunt picked it up, and it was Joe Esposito. And Joe said, "Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you. I've got your number memorized. Elvis has been trying to call you every day, 10 times a day." Elvis grabbed the phone from him and said, "Honey, where have you been?" I said, "I told you I was going on vacation." And my heart was beating, And he said, "Well, I want you here with me." When I said I want to be with you, I meant I want to be with you. And I want you on a plane in the morning, and I want you to come to LA, and then we're going to fly to Las Vegas here. And I'm going to start rehearsals for my show. And I said, I still have sand between my toes. I just came from the beach, and I don't have any clothes to wear in Las Vegas. And he said, "Don't worry about it." So that's the phone call that I got that evening. Is that the one you were referring to?
Linda, let's do this. What I'll do is, I'm going to kind of do a round robin.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll die of a heart attack by the time we get to this section over here. Who over here has a question? First, okay. I'll get with you next.
I have a question for Sam. When I met you in Penticton at the festival, we talked about you writing a book. How are you going with that?
I'm about as close now as I was then. You're looking at a completely unmotivated person. I play golf 3 days a week, and it's hard to squeeze anything else in. What can I tell you? But there's been so many books written and so many truths told about him, and some fabrications, I think, out there too. But I think we've all got a pretty good picture of who Elvis really was, and I enjoy more these personal encounters like this and telling stories and answering questions. I get a lot more fulfillment and enjoyment out of that than I think I would if I were to put down a lot of things and try to memorialize it. I'm certainly not into it for any kind of self-aggrandizement. It's not about me. It's none of my stories that I tell about Elvis are about me, and if they are, it's about me being a butt of a joke or that type of thing, which did happen on occasion. But it's just about Elvis and trying to reveal some of his character. But thank you for asking that question, and who knows, maybe my golf game will degrade to the point where I'll have to write something.
And Sam, you do have Burger Tuesdays in Dallas. Don't forget that. That takes some time.
I do, yeah.
I would just like to ask you, Linda, if you're friends with Priscilla Presley now?
Well, we're not enemies, but we don't do lunch.
And I'm going to walk very quickly to the other side of the room on that one. Linda, if it makes you feel any better, Priscilla and I don't do lunch either. All right, what about over here? Who has a question over here? All right, I got you. No, I'm kidding. Deep breath. This is Las Vegas. What is it, 84 out here?
Hi, I got 2 questions for you, but you only have to answer one. So the first one is, can you share a memory that you don't think anybody else in this room knows with Elvis? And the other question is, what do you think of the new Elvis movie? What do you think of the new Elvis movie?
I haven't seen it, so you're asking the wrong person. You know, I haven't seen it. I don't know that I will, because honestly, it's so deeply personal to me, the time that I spent with him and the intimacy that we shared. And it was 4.5 years of 24/7. You know, Elvis was not a normal person where he would go off to work and come home at 5 p.m. and you'd have dinner and, you know, feed the kids and do whatever. He was intensely wanted to be with you all the time, very intensely. So, you know, I feel like it's so personal to me, it would be painful for me to kind of relive that aspect. I think it looks very entertaining. I've seen clips, I've seen the trailer. It looks like Austin Butler does a great job. Yeah, that was a sense that I got as well. It looks like he really did it. Of course, there was only one Elvis ever. But you know, some of these guys that are performing here, I've watched them and they're amazing. Any one of them could have done that as well, because, you know, Austin Butler did a great job, but these guys are also, you know, world class. So that part I'm sure I would love in the music, but you know, I think there are some misrepresentations of the truth that I've been told about that I think would be, quite honestly, I think I would be offended, and you know, I think it's a disservice to Elvis to not have allowed him in people's memories and in the media or whatever, to not have allowed him to live the last 4, 5, 6 years of his life. He didn't curl up in a ball and give up on life. You know, he was a strong and powerful man. So I don't know, again, how the movie depicts him. I just know the man that I knew was a very powerful presence. I mean, he had charisma like nobody. And he was smart. He was not a dummy. And there were things about the Colonel he didn't know, of course. But, you know, he knew who the Colonel was. And he played the game as well as the Colonel did. He was a smart guy. And he was a grown man. So, you know, I don't want him to be depicted as a victim or someone who gave up on life. He was so joyful. Elvis was the funniest and most joyful human being. He found joy in singing and telling jokes and the camaraderie of his entourage. He and I had so many little inside jokes. And one thing, you asked for a memory, it's been told though, and I've shared this memory before, one of our favorite things to do was to, after the show, in the showroom here, we'd go down in the dressing room, then go back up to the suite on the 30th floor. And everybody would be dressed so beautifully, so elegantly. Back in the days, you know, people really dressed up for Las Vegas. And so people were in the suite, you know, the guys would go around and invite girls to come up, and there would be 30 or 40 people in the suite waiting for us. And there were these stairs in the suite at that time, and we had our dressing room over to the side. So Elvis and I would go to our respective dressing rooms, black out our teeth. So when we would come out, I would have these long Susie cream cheese, gorgeous, elegant gowns on, you know, bedazzled jewelry, and Elvis would be Elvis. You know, he didn't need anything except, you know, his aura. So we would come out and we would hold hands and walk down the stairs, and you would hear the little hushed whispers like, "Oh my God, that's it. She's too skinny. No, oh my God, I think she's pretty. No, would you?" And Elvis is so handsome, and you know, they would just be whispering all these little things about us, and we would smile and then not have front teeth. And the people, it was so funny because the natural reaction, you know, some of the people would go, you know, like, "Oh, I guess they're from Tennessee. They must come up and take their teeth out after the show." And then other people would laugh, they would get the joke, and some people were afraid to say anything, but it was one of our favorite things to do. But that's the Elvis I knew, who loved to play practical jokes, and just we watched Monty Python endlessly, we watched Peter Sellers, the Pink Panther, The Party, and we laughed. I write in my memoir that Elvis liked to laugh as much as he liked to sing, almost. So, you know, the Elvis that I knew was a joyful, happy person, so don't worry about that. Do you have anything I should know that you know that I don't?
What was the question?
Have you watched anything that's been on YouTube about Elvis? It's because up until I watched it, I believed that Elvis is gone. But after I've seen these, it makes me feel that he's not. they bring up a lot of stuff about him being, in the FBI and helping. I mean, I stayed awake till 3 o'clock in the morning watching this. That I got to go to bed.
I'll field this question, ma'am. Are you okay? Do you have a fever?
No, we would all love to think that Elvis is living somewhere in the Bahamas, but sadly, no, he passed on August 16th. He did pass that day, and Sam knows as well as I. He sat with the body in the evening.
And certainly David knows over there too, and much to our regret, but there was after Elvis passed away, there was a rumor that there was a plot to steal his body. And in fact, several people were convicted and actually did some time at the prison where later I was the warden. So as a judge and all that, I had plenty of access to all these legal records, and I can tell you there was a legitimate threat to steal his body for ransom. So that night, the other bodyguard, Dick Grove, and I placed the police department and the sheriff's department around the house. And of course, I was armed, and I was asked to stay inside the house by Priscilla after we cleared the house out of the relatives. And as I like to put it, I sat there with an open casket with a 12-gauge H-17 Remington pump shotgun and a pistol. And I sat there next to an open casket all night long until I was relieved by Dick Grove the next morning. And of course, that was the day of the funeral. So I can assure you folks, much to my chagrin and much to my sorrow, Elvis Presley passed away on August the 16th. And I don't know what you're listening to. And I have people come up to me all the time and tell me he's really alive and working at the Burger King in Kalamazoo or someplace like that. And and that's why they make 9 flavors of Jell-O. Just whatever you like, you can believe what you want to believe, but I know what the truth was.
Hello.
Can I just interject and say, Elvis is still alive, and you're witness to that. He's alive in the hearts of all of us, in the memories. He will live forever. He will live forever because his music will live forever. And as long as we still gather like this and we remember him and celebrate him, he does live. So in that sense, he's very much alive.
No man is truly gone as long as he's remembered. And Elvis, I think, will always be remembered through really his greatest legacy, which Linda can certainly tell you, and David can too, what he would like you to remember him by, his music. So.
Yeah, humanity too, you're not wrong, yeah. Because he lived his life of service, really. I mean, he supported so many charities. I tell a story again in my memoir and in life, that we went to a little pet store one night, and he bought all 15 dogs. I mean, this is not like it wasn't a charity, but the little dogs needed a home. So he bought 15 dogs, and we were riding around with all these little puppy breath kisses. It was the most amazing thing, and we gave the puppies out to different friends and family. My mom and dad got a little poodle. I had a little Maltese, Fox Hue. So, and he donated to St. Jude Children's Hospital. Yeah, and that's still my, I donated the proceeds from my book to St. Jude's. I thought it was good karma. Yeah. So, he was an amazingly philanthropic human being too, very tender-hearted. So he would like to be remembered for that. And his humor is pretty crazy.
Was Elvis very polite to people?
Excruciatingly.
Why is that?
Well, I think it was part of the way he was raised in the South. Sam and I were brought up the same way, where I remember my dad one time, and they were not strict, our parents were not that strict, but I remember saying something like, my dad asked me a question, I said, yeah, and he said, excuse me? I said, oh, yes, sir. He said, will it break your jaw to say, sir? Oh, no, sir, no. So, he grew up the same way, where you say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, please, thank you. And I've kind of carried that on with my own sons, Brandon and Brody. As soon as they could talk, I thought if they can say mama and daddy, they can say please and thank you. So I think it's so important, and it just shows respect for another human being. So yeah, he was very polite, very, very polite.
Hi, Linda. John Daly from Memphis, Tennessee.
Hi, John.
Hi, Sam.
Next question.
I'll deal with you later. So my question, Linda, is you're friends with Barbara Streisand, and of course you dated Elvis at the appropriate year of 1975. What is the real story of why A Star Is Born was not done, based on either Barbara or your personal interaction with Elvis?
Well, I've heard it from both of them. I heard it from Elvis during the time. I was here, actually, with him when John Peters, who was Barbara's boyfriend at the time and the producer of A Star Is Born. So John and Barbara came back and had a meeting with Elvis. I didn't sit in on the meeting, but I was back in the dressing room. And afterwards, he told me, you know, they want me to do a film called A Star Is Born. I said, oh, and he really wanted to do it. He really wanted to do that film. He said, it's a great acting opportunity for me, because his favorite film was King Creole. He thought that he did the best acting job in King Creole. And so he said, I just really want to have an opportunity to show my acting chops, you know, to really have a great script where I can show what I can do. He fancied himself to be like a Marlon Brando, like he could have exuded that kind of talent if he had been given the right script. So he was really excited about doing it. And what Elvis told me was, he said, you know, honey, after, this is, you know, a couple of months later, whatever, they'd gone through all the machinations of, you know, trying to get the deal done. And he said, you know, I'm not doing the movie. And I said, why not? And he said, Colonel thinks it's a bad idea. And I said, why is that? And he said, he doesn't want me to portray a loser who dies in the end. So the Colonel was apparently worried about Elvis's image coming back in a film like that, and then portraying a loser, as the Colonel put it. So that's what I was told. That's what Elvis told me, and that's the reason. And Barbara said, she said we couldn't work out the deal with the Colonel. The Colonel blocked it. So, but not for, I don't think it was a monetary thing. I don't think it was because the deal couldn't be made. It was because the Colonel aesthetically did not want Elvis to be portrayed as a loser and to ultimately die in the end of the movie. It's a shame, because I think he would have, I mean, Chris Christopherson was also wonderful, but Elvis would have been Elvis.
Sam, it's so nice to meet you. Hello, over here. Right here, right in front of you. I have two questions for you. One is, Linda mentioned her first meeting with Elvis. What was yours like? And second, can you talk about riding motorcycles around Memphis with Elvis?
Well, the answer to the second one is it was harrowing. You know, people ask me how I met Elvis, and I say, do you want me to give you this long, expansive answer? Because the short one is he was dating my sister, you know, and he was living with my sister, yeah. And the buckle of the Bible Belt in the South, you know, that, which is sort of part of the story, because, you know, Linda told us that she was dating Elvis, and I was newly married. And by the way, I've been married 50 years. My wife is somewhere out there. I'm probably humiliate her, tell her to stand
She's a
up.
saint. She's the one with the halo.
She is. That's right.
Sam, she's right over here. I've got a few questions for her. Okay,
Oh,
let me ask you.
I think that's her going out the back door. So I was really apprehensive. Like Linda said, this guy was a big star, and I didn't really grow up with Elvis's music. I was a child of the 60s, you know, the Rolling Stones, all of that. And so I knew who he was. I knew he was a big star. And I knew my little sister was very pretty, and I was very protective of her. And, oh, she told us when she was a little girl that she was going to marry Elvis. And my father, I remember, looked at her and said, well, honey, you know, he'll be an old man by the time you get ready to marry him. And she said something like, he'll still be singing Hound Dog.
And he was.
Yeah. So, but I was very protective of Linda, and I thought, well, you know, this guy, he's just going to break her heart, you know, and I don't really want to perpetuate this. And so finally, Linda called, I think, one night and said, you know, why don't you guys come over and meet Elvis? And so Louise and I went over there, and we went downstairs into the basement, which really wasn't decorated all that much back then, 72.
Not before I redid it.
She redid it. But it was pretty much a basement, you know, windowless. And we're sitting down there, and I'm in my uniform because I have to go to work the next morning at like 6 a.m. And I knew they stayed up all night. So we're sitting down there talking, and I just felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I mean, Elvis, when he walked into a room, there was a magnetism that just emanated from him. You knew he was there. And so I turned, and he was standing there 1 o'clock or so in the morning, full karate gi, sunglasses, Greek fisherman cap, and a tipperillo. In a windowless basement, a man is wearing sunglasses. And I thought that's the coolest damn thing I ever saw. So I walked up, and I'm walking to him to say hello, and he sticks his hand out and he said, "Hi, I'm Elvis Presley." You know, like I don't know that. I'm in his house. But that's the first time I met him. And then he wanted to show me some karate moves and wanted to look at the pistol I had and this and that. And we spent the whole night singing gospel songs upstairs on the piano with Charlie Hodge and taking a tour of the place. And, he loved his home, and he showed it off. And it just sort of went from there. I think we became pretty quick friends. I certainly was impressed by him, perhaps far more than he was with me. But after that meeting, and after realizing that he had convinced my mother that the relationship between he and Linda was okay, I figured if he can convince her, I should be okay with it. So that's pretty much the way things happened.
She was a tough judge.
Any questions over here? Bill, you have a question? Bill Cherry, why don't you ask a question?
Bill,
Yeah,
Jerry,
Bill.
we're big fans.
Put you on the spot.
Well, he did. He put me on the spot. I was just in awe just listening to the stories. Hello, Linda. How are you? Sam, you doing okay over there?
I'm hanging in there, Bill.
I really don't have a question. I've spoke with the both of you, a lot, and I really have no questions for you. But I believe that guy had a question about a motorcycle over there that I don't guess he felt you touched base too much on that, right? So here's a question for you, Sam. Did you ride on any of the three-wheelers? We know Linda did.
No, I did not. I had a little more sense than that. But
I know.
those things were dangerous, by the way. But I didn't have a motorcycle, and I was scared of them. And he tried to give me a motorcycle one time in Palm Springs, and I declined it. And he bought it anyway and had it delivered on a flatbed truck. And I told him I didn't want it, and it was a Harley-Davidson Sportster. And would I like to have it now, David? Yes, I would. You know what he did? He gave it to the guy that was driving the delivery truck. Elvis did not like you to turn down the gift. But one night we were at Graceland, and Elvis had a big motorcycle. I can't think of the name of it.
Harley Hog.
No, it wasn't a Harley. It was, what did he have, David? Like a Yamaha? It was a big Honda, Golden Wing or something, big one. So he gets on it, and he said, I know you're going to want to drive one, but get in the back. And so I got behind him, and I'm holding on to him. And we take out, and we go down Highway 55, the interstate there. And hammered down. I bet he was doing 80 or 90 miles an hour. I was petrified. And I'm on the back of this motorcycle, and, all of a sudden, he's got a helmet on, and I do too, and all of a sudden I see sparks coming up over the top of his helmet. And I look over, and he's doing about 100, and I thought, we're going to die. That's it, There's something's horribly wrong, and we're going to crash. And so I kind of tightened up on him, and he kind of grunted like this, and he pulled over the side of the road, and he turned and said, what the hell's wrong with you? As he lifted the visor, he had his cigar there. And the faster he would go, that wind would go up underneath that cigar, and it would spark. I was pretty sure I was done for. He made me get off the motorcycle, and Dick Grobe was driving a car, because he didn't ride motorcycles either, and he picked me up and took me back to Graceland.
Sam, you referenced him. I don't know if anybody realizes, ladies and gentlemen, Elvis's stepbrother, Mr. David Stanley's here. We have a question back.
By the way, have you all seen Bill Cherry perform? How many
Yes.
people? How great is he? Yeah, he's a great performer.
Okay, so I have a two-part question. The first part is my husband right here. This is his first Elvis festival, but he's been a lifelong Elvis fan. And when Elvis passed, he drove in his camper from Ohio and parked outside the gates of Graceland for a week. And they befriended the guards. And at 2 or 3 in the morning, the guards took his family, but he stayed in the camper with the kids, into Graceland. And I, after 20 years, just last year, got the pictures from the inside of Graceland with the guard who's smoking a cigarette and his ex-brother-in-law who is in Elvis's barber chair. And the first question is, we can't figure out where Elvis's barber chair actually was, even though his sister said she thought she could see the trophy room from there.
Yeah, it was out by the pool.
It was, okay.
Yeah, that's where the barber chair was.
And that's where she thought it was, but from the pictures we really couldn't tell. And the second part of the question is, this morning when we did the tour up in the penthouse, a woman up there said that you had said in your book that Elvis told you that he loved you for the first time in the pool up there, but it wasn't there back then. And I said, well, maybe it was in the pool downstairs, because if he rented an amusement park at night, maybe he rented the pool at night.
It wasn't by the pool. We were actually on the 29th floor, waiting to go up to the 30th floor. He was in rehearsals. And I think maybe Raquel Welch was here during that time in the main showroom, and she was on the 30th floor. She had the penthouse, and we were on the 29th floor, and there was a balcony outside, and we were sitting on lawn chairs, chaise lounges, just sunbathing, and we had been together 2 weeks, and he was holding my hand, and he said, "You know what we've done, don't you?" And I said, "Well, what?" He said, "We fooled around and fell in love." And I said, we have? And he said, well, and he looked at me and said, well, I have. And I said, oh yeah, me too, for sure. But I was stunned, after only 2 weeks when he said, we fooled around and fell in love. And that was the beginning of a deep and abiding love that we had for each other. And we were more than friends. We were more than lovers. We were more than brother, sister. Sometimes I was mom and he was the baby, and sometimes he was like the daddy figure, and I was his little girl. So we kind of encompassed all these different facets of a complete relationship, which I think, in a true and in a relationship that will sustain itself and survive, you have to be all things to each other. Best friends, lovers. Sometimes I was a nurse to him. Oftentimes I was a nurse, it felt like. And we were just best buddies as well as lovers. So I think that's why he wanted me on the road with him all the time. We spent so much time together. Like, he wanted me on every single tour. I didn't go on every date of every single tour, but I was on every single tour, every engagement here. I was here for opening and closing, and during the engagement almost the whole time, except when he would have a little dalliance here and there. That's been famously exposed. But it was Elvis,
Linda, I was always wondering that I know Elvis loved gospel music. Can you explain his love for God? Because obviously he had some emotion there.
Love for God? Is that for gospel or for God, or both? I didn't hear the
God, she says.
For God, that's what I thought I heard. Yes, absolutely. He was, Elvis was a deeply spiritual person. He grew up in the Pentecostal church. He grew up in a, religious fervor. And he was deeply spiritual, and he would read all these books about religion. So even though he was Christian, he respected all religions. Like, he thought Judaism had its own beautiful traditions, and even Hinduism and everything. He just thought, he wore on a necklace for a long time the Egyptian Ankh, the Star of David, a crucifix, and even the little moon for the Muslim, for the Islam. And some guy came up and said, "Man, are you confused?" Elvis says, "I just don't want to miss heaven on a technicality." So he embraced all religions. And, I think that could solve the problems in the world if we could all just respect each other and respect each other's way of thinking, and, just know that there is one and only one God and one power. And he was really into his religion. And but again, he grew up in the Pentecostal church, and I grew up in Southern Baptist church, where you sang all the old Billy Graham hymns, Just As I Am, and Amazing Grace, and How Great Thou Art. it's funny because, you know, I have so many memories and so many moments with him. Someone sent me a photo not too long ago, and they said, remember this? And I had to look at the photo, and it was Mama Cass, me, Marty Allen. Do you remember Marty Allen? Marty Allen, Frenchie, his wife, who passed away not long after that photo. And Mama Cass, Elvis, me, and Joe Guercio was playing piano. And I looked at the photo and went, oh, I forgot about that. I met Mama Cass, didn't I? And then it tweaked to memory, oh yeah, she came up to the suite and we stood around and sang gospel songs and, you know, just shared a lot of revelry and, you know, and kind of, and she asked him, you know, why do you love gospel so much? And he said, you know, you just have to listen to the feel of it and listen to the words and know that they're have an aspiration toward a higher good. You know, I don't know if he used the word aspiration, but that's what he meant. And just look up to a higher good and reach out to your fellow man. And that's, you know, he embodied that whole spirit. So, and to me, that's what religion is about, and gospel music, and, you know, just looking up.
Hi, Linda.
Hi.
I'm back here, way back here.
It's hard to...
To the left.
My left or your left?
Her left.
My left?
Your left.
Okay. Wave. Oh, there you are.
Hi.
So way back here. My question is about music. For the music you guys listened to back then, if Elvis was alive today, what would he be listening to?
Oh, that's a good question. Elvis, you know, was an amalgamation, his music was an amalgamation of so many different styles, black influence, country, and even opera. You know, he had Mario Lanza albums and Leontine Price, and we used to listen to opera. He loved country music, and I think one of the reasons he loved country music was because of the lyrics. You know, it just would tell a tale and elicit such emotional response. So he'd be listening to country for sure. Pardon me, and country today is almost like pop was back then. So I don't think he'd be a big fan of rap, I gotta be honest. You know, he had a sense of decorum, even though he set the world on fire with his movements, and, you know, he was outrageous, he was considered outrageous then. But, you know, what he did was so mild compared to what some of the musical artists are doing today. I think he would be horrified by some of the lyrics, to be honest. And I don't think he would have ever sang those lyrics himself. He loved to make jokes, and he could be the most profane person that you've ever been around. But he knew when to do it and then when to pull out the little church boy presence, you know. So he had quite a decorum about him, and I think he'd be listening to country mostly, and some pop. I think he'd like Billie Eilish. I think he'd like some of those, you know, mellifluous tunes, some of the things you could sing along to, but, you know, I don't think he'd be into rap.
Linda, I'm having a little trouble walking wearing Elvis's ring. So just give me a minute, folks. I'll get there when I can. No, I mean, I forgot I had it on and everything. I didn't want anybody to notice it at all that I was wearing it, but I guess I will. Can I ask you something? How old are you? 23, okay. You're older. I thought you were like 16. But isn't it great to see the younger people are into Elvis as much as we are?
Yes,
it's never going away.
Hi, hello.
Hi.
So what were your thoughts on the Colonel when you and Elvis were together? Like, did you have any input on any of the decisions?
For the Colonel? No. I mean, I always thought the Colonel was brusque. You know, he was just, it was just always like on a mission. He was not warm and fuzzy. He was not grandfatherly. You know, he was a very brusque individual. He was married to a lady named Marie, and apparently she had a lot of health problems, and she was on prednisone and things, and he said it made her mean, so we were always afraid of Aunt Marie. We'd go to her house in Palm Springs. But, you know, I never found him to be warm and fuzzy, but, some of the things that, you know, Elvis had told me later on, like he he said, the Colonel doesn't want me to tour Europe. I want to tour Europe. I want to go to Japan. I have got great fan base there, and I really want to tour Europe. But the Colonel says he can't provide security. So that was what Elvis told me, that the Colonel had said, I would love to take you to Europe, but they'll kill you. They'll tear you apart because I can't provide the security that you need. And it's true that, you know, when Elvis was so enigmatic, you know, when he would go outside, a crowd would form, and they, not meaning to hurt him, but just wanted to touch him, and, you know, they would rip his clothes, they could scratch him, and he, in fact, when he passed away, he had a big scar on his hand where a fan had reached up and scratched him, a very deep scratch, and it got infected, and it left a scar, a little divot there. So again, you know, they didn't mean to hurt him, but he knew that it was kind of treacherous here sometimes to go out. So it made an impact on him, and he thought, well, the Colonel can't control the crowds, I guess I can't go. But it was a huge disappointment to him to not be able to tour Europe.
Hi, from Denver. So I would like to hear a story about coming to Colorado, going to the mountains, because there's like some really crazy stories about that. But I also wanted to pay you a compliment from one of Elvis's bodyguards in Denver, from the Petrofesso brothers,
nice.
From Bobby. I saw him 2 weeks ago. And he said, you know, Ron and Bobby, and we were talking about when you guys flew to Denver, and he said, yeah, he goes, I had to go one time and pick Linda up at Combs. He goes, and oh my God, the door opened up, and there she stood in the doorway, and he said she was the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life. So I would just like to hear a story about some of your skiing in Colorado.
That's so nice, thank you, and please give him my love. Yeah, Ron Petrofesso and Captain Kennedy. There was a great police force there. My kids went to school at Boulder. They love Colorado, so they. Captain Kennedy just passed away, she said. Yeah, they were wonderful to us. And, you know, Elvis fancied himself as a police officer, and he collected badges, and he loved the drama of police work and all that. So he wanted to do ride-alongs with them. And I don't know if Ron told you some of the crazy stories about that. But, you know, we didn't ski. We would get on those little round, I don't even know what they are, the little round disc.
Toboggans?
Trash can lid is basically, you're right, what it was. We were crazy. We could have been killed. But we would have been better off snow skiing, but we would get on those things at like 2 o'clock in the morning. We would hike up the mountain and then come barreling down on those things and just spinning and collide into each other. And, you know, he and the bodyguards were crazy. And then one afternoon, I did put some skis on, and I was going to just try to ski. And so I was able to stand up, and I was going down the hill, and Elvis said, honey, stop, that's a ledge. And I said, I can't stop, I don't know how to stop. And Elvis said, stop her, Red. So Red tackled me. So that was my only time skiing then until I learned to ski later. But it's a beautiful sport, and it's such a great state, Colorado. But we had so much fun in Vail. And I remember cooking spaghetti one night, because I tried to be very nurturing to Elvis, you know. So and all the guys were there. We were all staying at this big, great chalet. And some of the guys were in hotels, but a lot of us were in the house. And I made spaghetti, and I thought it was really good. And Joe Esposito, who was authentically Italian, he goes, not bad for southern spaghetti. And I said, what do you mean? I was so insulted. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, it's kind of mushy, you know, the pasta is supposed to be al dente. And I'm going, what is that? So Joe Esposito had to teach me how to make pasta al dente and stuff. But we had great times. We really did.
I have a question. I'm right here.
Oh, hi.
Hello. So, as Sam knows, and you as well, I worked at Graceland for many years. I was deep inside a lot of his archives. I got to read a lot of things, see a lot of things, but I want to know, out of both of you, the one thing that I think is most important to me is the USS Arizona. I would like to know what you guys, a very deeply personal memory or whatever you may have of that.
The only memory I have of that, I mean, I know that Elvis helped to construct that, and so he told me about that. And when I went with him the first time to Hawaii, it was in November of 1972, and he was doing, you know, prep. He did a show, and he also did prep for the Aloha from Hawaii, and we toured it, and it was, you know, a very visceral experience for him because he served in the armed forces. He was very patriotic. Elvis even paid his taxes like 50%. He took no deductions. And I said, you know, you could take deductions. And he said, no, I don't want anything to do with, I make a lot of money. I'm happy to give Uncle Sam half of it. So I don't think anybody in the room feels that way. I mean, you know, we're entitled to our deductions here and there. But, you know, that's how patriotic he was. And so that was a really important experience for him. And I mean, it just kind of, again, goes to show his philanthropy and with a sense of generosity that with which he lived his life. That Elvis paid for his own ticket for the concert in Hawaii. He probably paid for the whole thing. I mean, he donated to the Kui, for Aloha from Hawaii. You know that he donated all the proceeds to the Kuili. I'll Remember You, the guy that did that big hit, such a beautiful song. So he donated the proceeds to that. Elvis was not about the money. That's why he was so inordinately generous. You know, he didn't care if, when he passed away, if he only had $5 million in the bank or whatever it was. He was happy to be giving money away and to doing things for others. You know, he didn't do things for money. He just did things because he loved people, and he loved the joy of giving and giving of himself, his talent, and whatever material possessions he had. If you come up to him and say, oh, that's a beautiful ring. Oh, you like it? Here, honey, you can have it. It's just, yeah. Don't tell me you like my ring like that.
Hello. It was touched on earlier before about the current movie on Elvis. I'm wondering if the production company had contacted either of you regarding any information or input towards the project.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
On the current Elvis movie, I was wondering if the producers or the production company contacted either of you for any input or information for the movie.
No, neither of us. And there's a guy named Bill Miller who worked for Colonel Parker for probably 20 years. And he was one of the snowman group, you know, he's got the card and everything. It didn't interview him. They didn't interview Billy Smith, who was the closest person to Elvis, his first cousin. David, were you interviewed? No? So I think there were only a couple of people who actually sat down with Boz and gave him the rewritten history, shall we say? But yeah. Yeah, there are a couple of people that he sat with and talked to at length, but nobody that I know that was really close to Elvis that could have, you know, given a little more insight, possibly, and a little more depth and dimension to the human entity, not to the performances. Looks spectacular. You know, I'll give them that. The clips that I've seen, I think Austin Butler does a great job, and I love Tom Hanks. He and his wife, I know pretty well. Rita Wilson was one of the first people I met in LA, and they're wonderful people, and he's a great actor. But I think as far as maybe showing a little more depth and dimension to Elvis, could have been a lot better to show that he had a tremendous capacity to love and to live and to laugh and to move on with his life. He didn't curl in a fetal position and die after 1973. He went on to live and love and laugh. So, you know, it's a shame. I think it's a disservice to him, too, to not have him represented, to just cut his life short. You know, I think he should be remembered for living the full life that he did, albeit way too short. He was 42, as we all know. Yeah.
Yes, over here. You know, here we are in the iconic, as they call it, Elvis showroom. I grew up here in Las Vegas since I was 9 years old, and I also consider Joe Guercio like a second father to me, who was the entertainment director here at, you know, when Elvis met him. Elvis said, "Oh, I'm never doing another show without you being my musical conductor and director." So I had, as a young child growing up, you know, with the iconic people from Las Vegas, but Joe Guercio used to tell stories about Elvis's sense of humor, which was really, you know,
out there.
And so I was just wondering if you were around at the time when Joe said this one story about, he had said to Elvis, said, "How was the show tonight?" And he said, "You know, conducting you is like following a marble down a staircase." And so the next night in the backstage, you know, they've kept it the same, as I understand, to keep the history of Elvis in this showroom. Elvis had released like 100 or more marbles that came down the stairs when Joe came in to conduct the show that night, because he thought it was funny if I'm like following marbles down the stairs because they go this way or that way. But he was very generous with Joe Guercio, and I just wonder if he ever, you know, shared any stories about working with Joe and how that really took his career in another direction musically.
Sam can talk about that. But I will say that just backstage, when Sam and I were standing there, I looked around and I said, "Oh my God, think about this. This is where Elvis was for the hundreds of shows that I saw in the years that I was with him. This is where he stood. This is where he would stand with his head down and saying prayers and getting ready to go on stage and to perform for everyone and give it his whole heart and soul." And I said, and Joe Guercio was, you know, we both remembered Joe so fondly, and Elvis loved him. And he had a raucous sense of humor as well. But Elvis had a very irreverent, raucous sense of humor. So Sam can tell you about the marble thing.
That's a true story. Absolutely. Elvis said, how'd you like the show? And he said, "Well, following you is sort of like following marbles rolling down the stairs," because Joe Guercio was classically trained. So he had to have sheets for every musician, and later on Glenn D. Hardin wrote those out by hand for trumpet players, you know, for Pat Houston, our trumpet player, and everybody, Marty Harrell, the trombone player. And Elvis was spontaneous. You know, the reason he had, I know I digress a little here, but I can't help it. I'm old, I wander, you know. But Ronnie Tutt, he loved Ronnie Tutt because Ronnie Tutt watched Elvis and he followed Elvis's movements on the drum set. Paul Lime, who does a lot of these Elvis shows now, he does it with charts. And we talk a lot, Paul and I do, about the difference in that because it was so organic with Elvis and with the music. So that sort of drove old Joe crazy for a little while until he kind of figured it out. So when he made that comment about it's like what you know, following marbles bouncing down the stairs, the next night Elvis got thousands of black marbles and put them all in his dressing room, stuck them in his suit that he was going to wear and everything. And when Joe opened up his dressing room door, these marbles just flew out like this. And that was Elvis's way of letting him know that he had heard that story. You know, Bill Cherry and I, we spent for about 5 years, we did riverboat cruises down the Mississippi with Elvis's estate, Elvis Cruises, on the American Queen Line, and Joe Guercio was the orchestra conductor. So we had a lot of evenings where we were regaled with stories about Joe. And if I can tell one quick story, some years ago on this stage, I wasn't even working for Elvis, I was just hanging out. And David's brother Billy and I were over here on the side of this stage. And you know, when Elvis came out very flamboyantly, you know, the music was playing and the spotlights were flashing, and we didn't have these kind of mics. He had long cords. And I'm standing back here, When Elvis comes out, he gets about halfway on that stage, and the microphone goes ding, and hits the stage like a bomb. Joe Guercio dropped his baton. He thought it was a gunshot. Ronnie Tutt quit playing, and I mean, everybody is looking around, and the orchestra's not playing, the rhythm section's not playing, people are stunned. And Elvis reaches down and picks up the microphone and does this with a cord. Till he gets to the curtain, and he pulls the curtain over, and the spotlight hits me, and I'm standing on the mic cord. So later on, I get an invitation to come up to talk to Elvis, and I thought, oh, and back then, he gave everybody bracelets. He had nicknames. His was Crazy, and Joe Esposito's was Jaws. Mine was Paddlefoot.
Well, folks, have y'all enjoyed this? When you talk about Graceland, when I was in college, I was drinking some iced tea, me and some of my buddies, and somebody must have slipped some Who Hit John in there or something, but next thing I know, we're driving from Oklahoma to Graceland. We left it about 1 or 2 in the morning, and Uncle Vester was still at the gate. And he opened the gates. Can you imagine this today? And let me pull my car up and take a picture in there. And then Sam took a shot at me. But before that happened, it was okay. But I know I speak for everyone when I say thank you. It means, you have no idea what it means to us that you two would take your time, tell us these stories. And every time I've been around both of you, you're the most wonderful, genuine, nice people. And I'll just leave you with one final question. Did Elvis, could he have ever dreamed this would happen? And could either one of you, that here we are all these years later, and it feels like we're just getting started?
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice to hear, just getting started. But, you know, I know that Elvis knew he was loved, but it's such a phenomenon that all these years later, and like all these beautiful young people who are in their teens and 20s and 30s even, because Elvis passed away, 45 years ago. So to have young people still honor him and love his music and celebrate him, and he was gone before they were born, that's amazing to me. And I think he would be absolutely astonished and humbled more than anything, because he was such a humble human being. And, sometimes in all of his purported arrogance, he walked, like Sam said, he had such a presence. When he walked into a room, he commanded it, and he had such charisma and presence. But he had also beautiful humility. And I think that he would be so appreciative, I know he would be so appreciative of your love and devotion, and for, like we said, keeping him alive, keeping his memory alive, and keeping him alive in our hearts and our minds and our memories. So, no, I think he would be astonished.
Sam, did you ever dream this?
It's hard to out-eloquence Linda. But I'll try. I just...
You're better educated than I am. You should be able to do that.
Far better. Yes, that's right. That's right. She always introduces me as her much older brother. Much older. I don't know. I think with any entertainer, you always have these moments of doubt, like, will I be remembered? Is there any permanence in what I'm doing and my performances? I know in other entertainers, and of course Linda's met so many people too, there's always that element there. You can have a lot of bravado and confidence in what you do, but you always have that little nagging of, I have to be recognized, my fans need to remember me, because Elvis was all about his fans. You were the most important thing to him, his music and performance and pleasing his fans. And I think that in those moments, maybe when Elvis had a little bit of doubt like that, and there weren't very many, and he certainly didn't share them with me, we didn't have that kind of relationship, I think that he would today be astounded, like Linda said, that he has this number of people that show up, frankly, to listen to other people who knew Elvis, to tell you a few stories about him, to go see movies, and to listen to his music. And I still say that the most important part of Elvis Presley's legacy, the most important, the most enduring part, and I do believe the most important part for him is his music. So thank you for keeping that memory alive.
You know, I feel like I would almost be remiss in not saying too and pointing this out, and you probably all have thought this yourselves. Elvis is almost like a religion, you know, and he would, I think that would flabbergast him. Because he would always say, when people say, you know, you're the king, they would hand him crowns on stage and things like that. And he would say, no, there is only one king. And that's not me, that's the one reigning above. So he would be, I think, flabbergasted to know that his memory and his legacy has become almost like a religion, that people make the pilgrimage to Memphis every August 16th, have candlelight service, and sing and tell stories, and that on the anniversary of his birth, every January 8th, there's always things that are happening. So, yeah,
But we
it's
will be
pretty amazing.
taking up a collection.
Yes. I think it's called Sam's Church, or no?
And on behalf
Just
of all
kidding.
Elvisites, I can just say amen and thank you, Elvis
Amen.
Presley. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, Sam Thompson and Linda Thompson. Y'all are wonderful.
Thank you so much. Let's just keep that religion going.